I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm ready to talk with you, to answer questions, if you want to know some more about mantra or other things. Yes?
What suggested that you use two pianos in the first place? Surely
Could you speak louder now?
The work would suggest that you use electronic methods of sound reproduction rather than the piano. In the piano you only get a 12-note scale, whereas by electronics you could produce a scale with an infinite number of notes. Would you not explore the space, say, between a C and a C sharp and so on?
Well, that's the way it is. He says why I did use two pianos and not compose the entire piece for electronic means, because with electronic means I would have had much more subtler scales and other possibilities, and I said that's the way it is. I had in mind to compose a work for two pianos already before. I said I started a different piece and then I threw it away because I didn't like it. And I came back to this original idea from 1969 to establish a complete composition on one formula. I worked out the formula, and I have never thought of anything else than hearing the entire composition from the beginning on with two pianos. And also writing everything so that it is related to the possibilities of the 10 fingers of each player, and 2 times 10 fingers, and everything they can do with their hands. Yes?
In Momenta, you have intimations of previous works. You have moments dovetailing into works of your past.
Not in Momenta, no.
That you have composed in the past.
In procession, not in Momenta.
Well, are there intimations of other of your works in this piece?
No, no. It's not possible. There's not one single note which is not derived from the mantra. Even if I would like to, I didn't allow myself to add any free note.
No, it's just that the schema appears, superficially anyway, to resemble the schema in Momenta, to look at anyway.
Yeah. You mean the construction principle to have another family tree, though it is quite different? Yes, that is similar to the construction of Momenta.
You've mentioned your use of the ring modulator, and you say that the notes become more dissonant. Yes, more dissonant as they move further away from the center to which the ring modulator is tuned.
Right.
Do you mean this in the chromatic sense of distance, or in the relationship of the notes such as dominant and so on to the center?
No, the more consonant the interval in relationship to the note that is fed into the modulator is, let's say the most consonant is the note itself.
Yeah.
Could you open the modulator? I can even tune it. Until it's clean. Which means I get the sum and the difference. This is 220 cycles per second, what I'm playing. It makes 220 plus 220 makes 440, and it makes 220 minus 220 makes 0. So what I get actually is just a slight emphasis of the second overtone, the octave. This one. You hear that?
Yeah.
Now the next, what can happen is its octave itself, which reinforces the fundamental. If I play 440, then I get the fundamental, you hear it, which is 440 minus 220, which is fed into the modulator. And you get 440 plus 220, which is 660, which is the third overtone. There it is. So I get slightly changed color, which comes closer to a horn color, like a horn in the orchestra. Only we have here a note which has a decaying curve. But the horn is characteristic for having a specifically loud third overtone. Now the next consonance in relationship to 220 would be the fifth itself, after the octave, which is, and the prime, which is this note. Which is 330 cycles per second. It's 220 divided by 2 multiplied by 3 makes 330. Which is in relationship to this note like 2 to 3 as an overtone. Which means that I get 330 minus 220 makes 110, which is the fundamental of these two together. You hear la. There it is. And you get 330 plus 220 makes 550, which is in relation to this. Now the next consonant interval in the order of consonances would be the fourth. Open a little more. So what you get is 3 to 4. 220 divided by 3 gives an odd number, a complicated number. Well, what is it about? 220, 210 would be 70. It's 73.3333, etc. And this you have to multiply by 4, makes 493 approximately, does it? I think so. And then that's why you get now the 493 and a very low note, which is what was it? The 330, 3 to 4. No, 493 minus 220. So, and there you hear already the note is becoming rough. And the next consonants now would be the major third. It still sounds fairly consonant, but you get very low fundamental. You hear that? And yeah, you get a yeah. Well, where is it? There it is. This note is reinforced, which is the ninth overtone. Because these two obviously relate most like 8 to 10. Or like, what is this, major third? 4 to 5 makes the 9. Major third is 4 to 5. So if you add them, you get the ninth overtone. And if you subtract them, 5 minus 4 makes the fundamental, is 1. But very, very low. So this, I should look for, this is 4, 2, 1. You get this fundamental. If I just hit one note, the next one is the reverse of this note, which is what corresponds to the major third is the minor 6, which is this one. Then we have the minor third. Here now the dissonance is coming. And to this corresponds the major 6. And now we have the major second and the major seventh. And finally we have the minor second. And we have the major sevenths. These are the most dissonant then. These two. And finally the tritonus, which is, as we always call, the devil in music. It's a mixture of consonances and dissonances. Not so devilish, I like it very much. It's related to this note. So when I play the mantra, then you see how it is composed. The first one is the fundamental itself. at the end of the first limb, you have the best consonants you could find, which is the fifth. So it's like a half cadence in classical music, if I might say. So we have, we go away, further dissonance, and resolution, half resolution, more consonant. The next one, but it's always more or less, more or less, more or less dissonant. It is as if I had, how can I say, defined the complete system of classical organization of consonances and dissonances, which means simply of relationships between more or less periodic vibrations. That's nothing else what we are talking about at this moment. As if I had verticalized the whole thing into the timbre construction. So the timbres are no longer coloring something which is already there, but they become an integral part of the composition. You cannot separate timbre from harmony anymore. And this is, I think, a new perspective of timbre and harmonic composition.
Could I say that, in fact, in the use of this ring modulator is almost a justification of the diatonic system and its relationship of notes to each other?
Well, it is not only diatonic. I use...
Scientifically that,
Pardon?
It proves scientifically that the diatonic system is a...
No, it's, I base it on the
order.
chromatic system, don't I? I use all 12 notes.
Yes, but I'm referring to the fact that the least dissonant sound is produced by the nearest related note, which,
yes,
which is the fifth, which in the diatonic system is the fifth.
Yeah, yeah, but the diatonic system is in this larger system.
Yes, that's what I'm
yes, naturally. Historically, we are not replacing one concept by another one. We're just expanding it, that's all.
May I ask you?
Yes.
Does the, to my ear, the apparent inability to sustain the long notes of the modulators?
Yes.
Do you compensate for this in any way, or does it worry you at all?
Well, no, you must remember that there are now in the complete first section, where I want to make that very clear, you have something that lasts, I think, 3 or 4 minutes. Going through the two pianos.
Yes, but in your in the original form of the third statement,
yes,
the bass,
yes,
the power of sustained sound is missing with the modulator.
Yes, well, that...
Does it not matter?
No, I mean, matter to what? I mean, it happens.
To the ear, I mean.
You hear first the modulated sound, and when the sound...
you don't, it doesn't have the power of sustaining those lower...
Well, as long as the piano note sustains.
Not without the modulator, it sustains longer, actually.
No?
And now you're using the sustaining pedal.
No, I have no pedal. But even so, I could. I mean, there's nothing against the pedal. What is the point? I hear the the overtone, which is the modulated note.
I'm sorry, it might be in the manner of performance because
the other things are going on. Because there's something on top. Yes. Naturally.
About mantric music. Do you, in your conception of mantric music, does it have to be composed in as systematic a way as you compose this?
No. That was just the particular approach of that composition. No. I think each musical composition should have a complete new concept of how to organize a sound of a world of sounds. No, it could be completely intuitive, as we have played other music, and it sometimes happens even much more pure and much more direct to achieve something like this mantric music that Aurobindo is speaking of, without any mental process.
Do you consider this as a piece of religious music in that case? I mean, do you consider the person who's listening to this should go through a religious experience or an artistic experience, or what?
Certainly, except that it is not related to a specific dogmatic religion that we know, but the universe is the divine that he is speaking of.
So you see this as a sort of way into the oversoul or whatever?
To what?
As a way into the oversoul. I mean, is the entire
I didn't understand the word. To the over what?
The oversoul. Or
I see.
whatever.
Well, I hadn't heard that word, but it's the same. It's
in the
okay.
bit of paper.
Yes. Well.
I mean, is it an entry into that? Is this what the piece of music is?
Well, I have said the music is, in its best aspects, organized like I imagine the atoms are organized, and we are organized in a larger cosm that we cannot overlook ourselves, because we are just like a single note in this complete piece, a composition, each of us, like one of those little grace notes, perhaps. And yes, and then you can see that the A in the whole first section is like a center of a whole galaxy, whereas in one single mantra, the A is like a sun with its 11 or 12 planets around it, with very precise distances. We have all the possibilities of relating such a world of music to the micro and macrocosm as we know it. It is a sort of a little musical, how can I say, kaleidoscope that shows directly its relationships to our modern knowledge of the microcosms of the atom and of astronomy. Yes.
Tell me to what extent the spatial aspect of having the two pianos a long way apart
Right.
came into
Well, the spatial aspect is entirely the result of an equality of right that I have established between two players, which means I have tried to give to each one similar activity, and therefore sometimes one player plays the mantra, then another one, but I have also naturally be careful not to do it in a foreseeable way, that it's just A, B, A, B, A, B, A. Also technically that's not possible if I let run through always these large mantras which draw together entire regions, then I let one pianist be more in the background and another one come in the foreground, and vice versa in the next version. And then sometimes this is speeded up, this alternation, also according to dramatic feelings, that I think now it's time that the changes happen a little faster than before. And then I leave one player alone for a long while, etc.
The passage you read from Aurobindo, he said that this new kind of music, which was to be mantric music, would not be intellectual. Now, I would have thought that your systematic method of composition would preclude that possibility of being mantric, because it would be intellectual. I mean, I would have thought this would be a very good example of intellectual kind of composition. I would have thought that what Aurobindo had in mind was more the intuitive method.
Well, you have the impression that intuition is excluded in this work?
Well, I would have thought it would be excluded by your systematic approach.
Well, it's true that I have emphasized the mental process of the making. But I have started by saying that I was humming the melody itself, wrote it down, took it as something that I found, and then I said all the determinations, for example, how to make this entire macrocosmic organization is something that you just see in one. It is even not so much my own invention. I said it has something to do with the tree of life, with generations and so many things.
This is an intellectual idea, this idea of the tree of life, the idea of a planetary system.
No,
it's
not
an
when I look out
idea.
of the window of my house. It's not an intellectual idea that a tree makes this and goes in smaller and smaller branches. It's very natural. I mean, it's not me who has thought this out.
No.
Oh no, by no means. That is one of the essential qualities of life and of growth. That you come to the smaller, like in a Gothic cathedral. The higher you go, the smaller are the same elements that you see already at the basis, the fundamental. It's nothing else. These are principles that you find everywhere.
Yes, but what I had in mind was that principles themselves were an intellectualization.
Well, there's always that misunderstanding, the mental. You can make, so to speak, with a purely mental approach, you can make an object which does not transcend the mental. So then there would be no excursions, there would be no concepts which cannot be derived from the object that you start with, let's say a series. I doubt even if we can make anything without intuition. It is perhaps so that I have put the accent tonight on the organization, but you must never forget from where it comes from and what it is supposed to lead to. So that has become very clear, and that becomes very clear when you play the piece, that it tries to transcend itself all the time. In particular, with these breakthroughs, you will see there are moments, there's one moment, for example, where they get so stuck in the complications, when the wood blocks hammer against each other, that finally they can't help, they can't continue anymore, and one gets up and just starts using his voice at some moment. And he says, "Oh," to the other one. So this is breaking out of this complicated mental world. So I think we need the mental always very much in order to apply intuitive forces to our means, to the material. We have a materialistic world, and that is wonderful, because it needs the channelings. As musicians, we have to deal with strings and wood and people, and it must all work, and they must be able to play it, etc. So it's a very physical aspect which must be organized by the mental. Otherwise, it falls apart. It doesn't work. You make mistakes and so on. Yes?
Would you say that in creating the mantra, you became the mantra itself, that you were the work of art, and that this is the ashes of experience that we now hear?
Well, as well during the act of composition, I have, as also during several performances, I have been totally absorbed by the sounds. I became the sounds, and in particular, I went through all the cycles. Yes, I have become mantra many times, and that was the crucial point actually when I was composing it. Day and night were no longer separated. It was, I would say, the happiest composition time that I have ever had up to now, and it's too strange because it almost went all by itself. I didn't need to do very much because it all had to be derived, and it flourished, and that was it. But I was so sure, I had no doubts, as usual, that it would perhaps not work aesthetically or God knows what. It was all clear. So I became easily one with mantra, and it was extremely happy. And no matter what the people say, there is an old-fashioned piece, and they find old styles in the piece. So what? I say, yes, it's great. Because if once you start working with such a principle, you give birth also to everything every now and then that has already existed before. It includes all the varieties that have occurred in a different context. Once you have such a genetic force working, then you produce all the children that have existed before. But the general world is new. It transcends again the known world, I would say.
Could you say anything at all about your organization of rhythmic detail, such as the sforzando chords that we heard in that long extract? I mean, when they should come and that kind of thing, or is this too complicated?
No, it's all in here. When the sforzato is written, And when we are in the 12th section, then there will be sforzati everywhere. And whenever we have the 12th expansion of the mantra, it will be just cluttered with sforzati. I mean, I have practically no choice. It all comes out of the mantra because all the dynamics are given in this piece here. Whenever one note is determining a whole mantra or a whole cycle of mantras, then they are predominantly piano. The second one are piano with forte. The third one are mezzo piano. The fourth one are again piano. Then the next one are pianissimo. And the sixth one is mezzo forte. The seventh one is fortissimo with decrescendo, etc.
Yes, so when you say one of them is full of chords or something, well...
Then each chord, each note of the mantra has a chord going with it. Yes. And how the chords are made, you have seen. Yes. They are nothing but verticalizations of mantric notes. Yes.
Did you have the idea of ring modulation from the very beginning?
Yes.
From the start?
Even before I decided to write a piece for two pianos, because I have made a piece which has also been, you say published on records or multiplied, I mean, issued on records. It's called Beethoven Stockhausen. and it was a piece for the birthday of Beethoven in 1970. And I used lots of excerpts of Beethoven music, of all his works, going from the earliest period to the last period, in 4 categories: strings and piano music and orchestra music and vocal music. And I composed it in such a way that there are 4 tapes. The material on the tapes I have organized. I have distorted the music of Beethoven as if it would come through a shortwave radio late at night. And in the Beethoven year, naturally. There was nothing but this music. And then I gave this to 4 players with whom I'm working very often. We have a group of intuitive music, and they played with the score shortwaves that I had composed before, with Beethoven material rather than with radio material. Shortwaves is a piece where they have to use radio material, pick up events out of the radio, and then transform them according to transformation science. In this particular case, we didn't use radios, but the Beethoven music. What I mean by this is that in transforming the Beethoven music, to make it sound more or less transformed or even distorted, as I said, like coming through a shortwave receiver, I used all sorts of technical means in the studio, and among them was the ring modulation process. And there I caught on. I have then been so interested in ring modulating piano music, I found a special way to do it. Also, this box is not just a simple way. You have to compress the piano sound and then cut off the peaks, etc., and then feed it into the ring modulator, and have a special ring modulator made which does not modulate the overtones of the fundamental. Otherwise, they come through again in the result.
Yes, I was surprised how well it...
How clean it is. Yes, it is a specially made one, where also the second and third harmonic are with a shifting filter, constantly pushed backwards 40 dB so that they don't come through. It's amazing that after almost 20 years of working in a studio for electronic music, without any instruments in the studio, I mean, that I discover all of a sudden a new way of how to modulate the piano. I should have done this before. But that's the way it goes.
Do you think that music is heading in any one particular direction?
Is going in one?
Yeah, one particular direction.
No, not at the moment. The world is splitting into innumerable different directions as the people are splitting. We are in the process of disintegration everywhere in the Western world in particular, but I would say all over the globe. And we cannot expect for quite a while to have again a unified outlook, let's say, like we have perhaps had one up to the Renaissance, which was given by a religion and nothing else. And afterwards it was given by some concept of man and all his feelings and emotions and quarrels and joys. But also this has fallen apart. Man is no longer in the center. But there is no unifying spirit at the moment. People are going in all directions at once. And this will last for several centuries before, again, I would say 3-4 centuries, mankind is focusing in a more anonymous way on a spiritual goal. Because we still have all this process going on where religions are fading out and one sect is coming in after another and one guru after a new one is praising the divine in a new way. And most of the people don't believe anything or are negatively against it, are nihilists, and so on and so forth. So how can music be going in one direction? It is not possible. It is not possible. Most of the music will just be made for filling time of people who don't know what to do, who are afraid of being alone, who use it like they would use drugs, or just for divertisement, for distraction, not to be in the silence. They are terrified to have silence, and so they put on music all the time, etc. So music becomes a kind of furniture now for a long time.
And what about the practicalities of performing the music?
Pardon?
What about the practicalities of performing the music? Because this piece can't be available to that many pianists, and likewise with your other work.
Why not?
It seems fairly hard. Perhaps they can answer.
Oh no, no. And we don't need the music that, well, where will you stop in defining the level of difficulty?
It depends, presumably, how much you'd like your pieces performed. It could depend on that.
Yeah, it will be performed as much as people want to listen to it and to pay for a performance. That's all. Because there are enough pianists available, but nobody wants them really. Or very, very few people want them. I mean, one duo in the world, we have 2 or 3 famous duos of duo pianism, and that is enough. Like the conductors or like solo pianists, they cover the complete world nowadays. They do most of the records and the recordings in radios, and on the big festivals they occur. They're always the same. I mean, there are very few. They can really satisfy the demands of all the musical festivals and activities. Whereas in former times, still up to a very present time, there was space for mediocre orchestras or pianists or conductors that were not always that extraordinary or appealing, but because they had a more local region to satisfy, the people were happy to have them. But nowadays everybody wants the best, the most chic, the most streamlined, the most modern, the most famous, etc. So they have it. Yes.
Do you think for this piece to work as a mantra and knocking holes in your consciousness, it's essential to understand the form of it, or helpful, or even possibly a hindrance?
Well, that is... May I ask another question? Do you think you can be deeply moved by looking at the sky without knowing all the proportions between the stars and their speeds and their relationships in terms of astronomy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the same.
Well, excuse me, I'd like to say then, why do so many people find much of your music inaccessible? Not for want of trying, I mean.
No, because we are all different. And I can only make a music which completely satisfies my demand that I put upon myself, where I think this is good, and this is what I identify with. And there is no question that there are very few people, as far as as my experience goes, who would identify with what I find is good and what satisfies me. We are very different.
There seems to be an impediment in the more educated you are in the Western tradition, as it were, the way of analytical thinking, the more you find it difficult to work into the music. Like I've played the music to people who haven't heard a great deal of Western music before, and they find it quite immediately accessible. And
yeah, that's true. I mean, the mental is mainly used in the wrong way, in the more and more in our Western society, because we are educated in the wrong way. We think we have to use mainly the mental in order to make things that are like the organization of the mental itself, whereas there is another approach to life which says that you might use the mental in order to filter out what the mental knows already and then discover the new. You can use the filter in order to satisfy the mental, you see?
So you train these...
You can, you see what I mean? There is a certain knowledge, what we call a knowledge. The mind is full of memory and knowledge that is stored, like on a tape recorder. And when something comes, then you compare it immediately. So you say wonderful or not. And most of the people, when they say wonderful, all they are saying is that what they have stored is similar to what they experience. And then they are happy.
And you train your intuitive musicians to sort of suspend this wall.
Yes, exactly. To use the intuitive mental in the opposite way, which means to filter out what I know already, and then see if something remains.
Have you ever written anything to say so ordinary people who aren't able to go to your courses, for instance, that can train themselves in this way of thinking? Or
yes, I have. Well, yes, I have published 3 books about all different aspects of music, which are called texts 1, 2, and 3.
Oh.
Yes.
May I say that there seems to me no difference between this work and the concerto, the sonata for 2 pianos by Mozart. Intellectual ideas are so meaningless to me because if you look at the structure of a Mozart sonata, you are also involved with the thinking of the composer, but you are also receiving directly the immediate intuitive process. And this is all that's happening here. Forgive me making that remark instead of a question.
Oh no, that is clear to me too. I would even go a little further and say, after Mantra was ready, and I talked to the pianist, and he said, how amazing, there's nothing in the literature for 2 pianos or for piano that is constructed in a similar way or that sounds alike. And I said, well, let's think if there's anything in our history of music which has been constructed in a similar way. And I could only think, all of a sudden, of the last works of Bach, where he uses always the same melodic formula in Kunst der Fuge, the art of the fugue, and also das musikalische Opfer. Yes. How is this in English?
Yes, the musical offering.
Musical offering. It didn't occur to me when I was working on this that there's a very similar process. He didn't have the expansion technique, which is, I think, something new. I also haven't seen it elsewhere. This particular expansion technique in time and in the registers, in the field of pitches, I think it's very general. Everybody can use it now. But it is the same principle.
I think what's interesting is that this is basically really simple. And to me, it's what I find about that exciting about the best music is this central simplicity.
Yes.
To be simple is to be
yes,
subtle.
Then you can transcend the mental very quickly.
As you mentioned just now,
I wasn't clear how you arrived at the scales of the expansions.
At what? At the expansions?
Scales of the expansions themselves.
Well, nowadays you have electronic instruments which have a knob that change. Let's say an octave which has so much space on the instrument and 12 keys. And when you turn the knob, then the octave is no longer an octave, but it comes either smaller. And then the 12 steps, let's say, are within a fifth or a fourth of a major third, or finally within one micro-interval. Or, the other way around, the octave becomes as wide as the complete piano, and then each step is 7 times as large as usual. So you can stretch and contract the distance between two notes, which correspond to the key. You have 12 keys, but the step from one key to the next in terms of sound can change and can be changed continuously with modern instruments. So there we have a continuous possibility of changing the scale and the width of the scale. When I use the piano, the gentleman has mentioned, then I cannot, for this particular piece, tune the piano always anew for each section of the piece. But what I do is I leave out certain steps, and then when we have the chromatic scale, I use all these in one octave, what we call an octave, where the sounds sound alike. If I would say that these 12 steps I stretch now over the whole piano, then I do this. That makes 12. So then I would make a music which has no other possibilities than these 12 notes. You see, then I would have a complete a piano only with 12 keys, and the distance from one key to the next would be so wide as I have just played it. So the music would sound all the time like this. Because I have no other keys. So I must make music with 12 notes. And this is what I am doing here in mantra. I change now the scale from the most narrow scale.
Yes, but I'm not clear what intervals you actually used in the expansions. For instance, you said that in the second expansion you expanded the octave to a ninth.
Yes.
So, for instance, what 12 notes did you use between the ninths?
Aha, well, I leave out 2 notes. I make twice a major second instead of a minor second. That's all. And that distorts irregularly the mantra when I play it then with these 12 notes. You see? The scale is now, for example, from A. There's a major second. Instead of this, I have. There's the second one. Rather than. So now the mantra becomes slightly distorted, as you have heard when I play now the mantra with these notes, then this one becomes, because 2 minor seconds have become major seconds, so that stretches the mantra a little bit. Pardon? And then when I have the next scale, then I have a mixture of minor seconds and major seconds, but more major seconds. For example, there's already one. That is what the gentleman mentioned before, like in a diatonic scale. Again one. There's a minor second, major second, major second. So in this, then, in this scale, the mantra sounds again more expanded, which it sounds not, but it sounds this is the major seventh, because it is stretched already. And finally it is, you understand? Etc. So the mantra is stretched the most possible, because otherwise they would have to play, that would be a very nice theater piece. The next expansion would be, etc. It's possible.
Have you arranged your expanded scales so that, say, your new octave now becomes a major 9? Have you still organized it so that within your new octave you still have each of the 12 chromatic notes there?
Well, as much as possible. No, what I do is that in 2 octaves that are, that are next to each other, real octaves, I try to repeat as few notes as possible, so that there are as little real octaves occurring as possible.
Oh, I see. But in each new octave, say the octave becomes
then it's always the same.
Yeah,
so if I once have, then the next one would be the same. I'm very pleased that you asked so many musical questions. That's quite unusual. Yes?
How far does Mandel's ideas of treating music influence your compositions today?
I'm very sorry. I could not understand you. Could you just allow a little silence? Yes.
How far do mantric ideas influence your present composition, your composition today?
Well, if I take this sentence for serious, we would create a mantric music or poetry to bring the gods into our life. Then I would say all of my work should become mantric art, mantric music. Nothing else.
And were you influenced at all before you actually wrote mantra by mantric thoughts?
Well, since my very first piece, all my works have had that same direction. Also, when I did not call it mantra. Oh yes, since the first works. We have discussed already 1951, 52, when I composed Kreuzspiel, there are 40, 50 letters which are going to be published soon as an exchange between Karlheinz, a Belgian composer, and myself about the new technique and the new music. And you find in almost all the letters this direct reference to the music in which the individual note should be treated like a star or like an individual spirit in the universe, like a person in a human society, yes.
In this composition, you've done many manipulations with the original mantra, many permutations of it, many mathematical or many whatever. Why did you stop there? Or better yet, why did you go as far as you did? Or could you have added more manipulations, more permutations, more elements to the composition?
Well, I could have.
Why did you
but
stop
then
there?
I would have gone beyond the mantra itself, because it has just 13 cycles according to the 13 initial notes, and in each cycle it has 12 transpositions over the sounds of the mantra itself, and that's it. So I have just stopped where there was everything fulfilled.
How does the addition of the antique cymbals and the tempo block play into this?
Well, I mentioned this briefly. The antique cymbals indicate just the large sections, which means that I have counted the number of the mantras according to the number that is applied to each pitch within the mantra. If you recall, number 1, number 3, number 12, number 8, number 9, number 6, number 11, etc. And these numbers I have chosen in order to grasp together. This is interesting for you because you don't know this yet. No, look what I have done. I have now counted. Where's that stick? I want to have the stick. I have counted now the mantras in the following way. 1 mantra, 3 mantras, 12 mantras, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And every time when there is a subdivision, 1, 3, then there is a stroke of the antic symbol with the pitch of the mantra itself, which means the first antic symbol has the A, the next one the B, and with that accent at the end. The third antic symbol has the G sharp. The fourth antic symbol has this, also with this, ticka-ticka-tee before. And they subdivide now the entire piece. As you know, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 up to 12 makes 78. I have said this before. Only here in a different order. We have 1 plus 3 plus 12 plus 8 plus 9 plus 6, etc. But it adds up to 78 mantras. Which means that up to the middle of the piece, we have reached 1/2 cycle, and 12 times an antic symbol has been hit. And then in the second cycle we have again 78, and 78 plus 78 is 156. So there's a wonderful number relationship between 1 up to 12 adding up to 76, and this twice reaches 78, excuse me. 178, reaching 156, and that then comes to the same number as there are mantras, which is very beautiful, so that actually we will have 24 mantra cymbal antique strokes, which have then subdivided the work in these sections. And each section now has an overall characteristic, again, which is indicated by these characteristics, and this I have explained before. Regular repetition. The next one is accents at the end. The next one is normal notes. And they follow, as I say, these numerical groupings. 1 plus 3 plus 12 up to here. The next one is 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So here will fall together with the beginning of section number 3 also an antic symbol stroke, and change the character again, which goes then to a section where we have many grace notes. So that is the function of the antic symbols, and the wood blocks have a similar function. Slightly different, yes.
In the beginning you played the notes without a rhythm. Was there anything that governed the choice of the rhythm and dynamics?
Clear. You see it. We have 4 different durations, and then I made a pause. The pause was not in the car when I was humming it. I added it later. So it is a natural pause. Ta-da-ti-da, pause. La-da. And the repetition also wasn't that often. Da-da-ba-da. That's all I remember. But it adds up to 6. It has 3 limbs. Here 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 notes. 3 notes, 3 times 2. Then 5 and 3. So actually we have 4, 6, 5, 3 notes. And the duration is different for each note, as I said.
What made you choose the A to be repeated 4 times and then the B to have a dotted note? And
this here?
4, yes.
Well, because I wanted that this single note, which is 1/4 note, that this single note has the character of regular repetition. Ta-ka-ta-ta. That is a character. You understand? That's all. I could also have made 5. Ta-ka-ta-ka-ta. Possible. But I just said ta-ka-ta-ta.
There was no logical reasoning. It was just a question of fantasy.
You mean for the ta-ka-ta-ta?
Yes. And the following.
Yes. That's a reason of fantasy. That's right. Ta-ka-ta-ta. Right. Yes?
It seems to me that different people have different ideas about music. But what would your idea of music be? I mean, I could go on the piano now and I could go plonk.
Yes.
In 1 second without thinking.
Yes.
You could do exactly the same with a lot of work. What's your idea of that?
Well, I think more or less, we always exteriorize, we materialize what we are. And we are what comes through us. We are not just ourselves. Something manifests through each person in all the varieties. There are not really two who are the same. So if you do just blank, then that's what you are. I wouldn't even say that I would ever like to miss that. You see, it is necessary to estimate something else, a difference. Though I would say there are more or less unconscious ways of approaching something, of exteriorizing oneself, or this force that is manifest within us. So if you do it unconsciously, I also could, perhaps in a very unconscious moment, could be very vulgar. But in general, it simply happens less and less. That's because I'm more and more conscious and I don't need it. But I can perfectly understand it whenever it happens.
Can I ask you also how much emotion comes into your music? Because from my point of view, I can appreciate that this composition is very good, but it doesn't interest me emotionally. How much emotion?
Well, wait until before you say that, because I'm sure when you hear longer stretches, it has a long breath, no question about this. It doesn't make sense to hear small bits. Then they are like firework sometimes, or like little whisper, or just like a little emotional vibration. But if you hear longer stretches, you begin to dive into this time. There's a particular timing, and I'm sure you will find everything that you are able to make become alive within yourself, I'm sure. Well, thank you very much.